Hello, everybody. This is Christine from A Naturally Balanced Dog, and I just wanted to say thank you for joining me today. And I have two very special guests that are joining me. But before we get there, I just wanted to let you know that we are here on every Wednesday at 5:45 Central Standard Time to do a live show, and we'll have additional guests that will join that are very knowledgeable in their practices, and they come on, which I really appreciate, to share their stories, share their passions about what they do, and they're here to answer questions. So if you have any questions, you can put it into the comment box, and we'll be sure to visit that. And let me just quickly introduce myself if you don't know who I am. My name is Christine. Again, I am with A Naturally Balanced Dog. I am the nutrition specialist. And what we do is we help to find solutions for dogs that suffer from allergies through our whole pet wellness panel, which is a food and environmental sensitivity test that you can do. And we also do custom meal plans to help dogs to find relief from their allergies. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you Amy and Nancy from Tallgrass Animal Acupressure. Hello, guys. How are you?
Hello.
Hi. And so what we're going to do is just have you quickly introduce yourself and who you are and what it is you do, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the topic, which is about food energetics. Great. Who would like to start?
I'll start. I'm Nancy Zidonis, and I've been working with animal acupressure for many years now, and we have created a series of books that explain acupressure to the layperson, as well as are used in other class materials by veterinarians, with the emphasis being to help people be able to work on their own animals and affect really positive impact on their health and well-being.
And I'm just going to input something. So one, I was just recently reading about that in the up and coming years and so forth, that we are going to have a shortage on veterinarians. And so I thought that was really very interesting it was an interesting read. But what is from a positive point, it's through things of this nature, through acupressure or food therapy, and there's other modalities that people can use that they should be learning about, because when the time comes, prevention is going to be the key to our pets. So it was kind of an interesting read. So, yeah.
That is interesting. Very good.
Yes. And so, Nancy and Amy, how did you guys have been, Amy and Nancy? So I believe I met you in 2017. Mm-hmm. That's when we met. And so you guys started this company together, and you travel throughout the country. I know you do in the country, but are you guys still going out of the country, or how are people coming into you to do the classes for acupressure?
Well, we have been teaching in England. We've taught in Australia, Israel. We have people from all over that when we are in England, they come from all over Europe, including, the northern countries. But we're going to not be traveling we also are in Canada at this point. So it's basically North America right now, this next year or two. We'll see what happens after that. Nancy and I have been doing this, Nancy, for over 30 years, and we started getting going about almost 25 years ago. And as Nancy mentioned, the real goal is to help people take care of their own animals. And with acupressure, the beauty of it is it's non-intrusive. You need to learn. There's quite a bit of learning you do need to having to do with what are the best points to work and why. But we can also give you, a good handhold to climb the mountain to learn.
Yeah. When I took your classes, it was done probably over a course of a maybe almost a year for me from the time that I started, because you had some hands-on classes. You came out into the area where I was able to, and then I had to go out into Colorado there and finish up the classes and stuff. And I got to say, it was probably one of the a very well put together program that was very nicely, where you took it from a very simplistic point that was very understandable for people who were not really understanding what acupressure was. And as you said, you kind of handheld through each of those pieces until the big test day. I remember going through my flashcards, going, oh my God, that test. But that was a lot of fun. But we are here today, and Nancy and Amy put together a slideshow for us. So we're going to be throwing up the slideshow here in a moment to be able to talk a little bit about food energetics. And so let me go ahead and get that for us here so that we can kind of go through the slide presentation here. So I'll let you guys go ahead and take it away.
Okay, well, obviously we are who we are, Nancy and Amy, and there we are. So we'll move on. You've just gotten to know us a little bit. We're going to be looking at food from a Chinese medicine point of view and how it works in the body. And if anybody's seen this, everybody I'm sure has seen this symbol one way or another. It's known as the Tai Chi symbol. The beauty of it is that it does explain the dynamic movement of qi, which are the two yin and yang, the two basic elements of qi. So let's move on to the next one. And we're going to be looking at food because there are a number of factors when we are deciding what kind of food, when to feed, how to feed, we have to look at. And the first one is major in terms of the seasons, and that's why we're going to be talking about feeding for the summer. But in the winter, we're going to feed differently than we do in the summer. One has to do with heating and the other has to do with cooling. And of course, the summer, we want to make sure the food has a cooling aspect to it. Then we have temperament. If you have a real hot dog, you want to make sure you're feeding cool foods, and you might be even feeding cooling foods all year round. And then the energy level of the animal, and I'm sure that Christine talks to you about how much proteins they need and what the balance is in terms of their energy level and what sport they're doing. And then you have the environment. Where is this dog living? Are they mainly living in a house? Are they mainly outside? What are the effects of their environment? Age is a biggie. Age is probably the biggest. Dogs, as they age, their metabolism obviously changes, and we're going to look at it becomes slower and the fact that you do need to warm the food so that it breaks down to bioavailable nutrients.
And so that it doesn't strain the body as much in the whole digestive process on the older animals from a Chinese medicine perspective.
Exactly, right. And because I did probably a little video clip in regards to spring foods and so forth. And so and when you're taking into these different factors of the seasons and the temperament and the energy, is there like a food list or something? I know I have a food list, but what do you usually recommend as far as like cooling foods versus warming foods and things of that nature? Is
that's in the upcoming slides.
Okay, so I'm jumping ahead. So okay, we're right on track. So let's go ahead and move there, shall we? So we got hot, neutral, and cold foods. Right.
Yeah. So one thing about the health conditions, and I think this is a key. That was at the end of what was on the previous slide. The health condition how well does this animal metabolize food? How's it absorbed? It doesn't just have to do with older and younger animals. It has to do with that animal very, very specifically. How are they dealing with food?
In a dynamic process. So how they are at any day and time, food could be changed depending on the underlying condition
Of the animal.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, we're at hot, neutral, cold foods. Gee, that's weird, isn't it? So we feed with a purpose. So part of the purpose is being able to feed warming foods when they're necessary. And we'll look at that more carefully. How, why, when. And cooling foods. And we're looking at that again. How, why, when. And then how to balance them using neutral foods and what are relatively neutral to make sure that the diet is a balanced diet. And I know, Christine, you're very involved with balancing. Just about
in several different, because as you said, I mean, the reality, every dog is different. And based on their temperament, because I have been kind of working with these hot and cold foods for a while, particularly with dogs with behavioral issues, and changing their diet. And to me, it is like one of those things that is a pretty amazing. I could tell you story after story of just, changing a dog's diet, and then in a week later coming back to do a follow-up visit. The difference in the dog is just tremendous. And I'm always like, what'd you do? And they're like, in 2 days after starting to feed the dog, a different, food regimen and putting them on certain foods that a lot of times I don't have to address behavior issues because it's resolved itself within the diet. So very interesting. I just love the way food works with the dogs.
It's absolutely amazing. And when you said within a week's time, that is so true, how quickly the change is affected, because it's from the external internal and then internal external. So it's absolutely an amazing shift in their whole well-being.
Yeah, I love it. I love working with the food aspect of with our animals. But so what does your dog need and when does he need it?
That's a big question.
That's a big question. So you can see that dog is having a nice brunch.
I think he's in France.
He might be in France having his champagne. So who does exactly that with their dogs? But here we go. This is, what does your dog need? And we'll go back to the next one. You're forward, I guess.
Okay, gotcha.
The main goal of feeding is to support the animal's life-promoting energy. That's chi in our way of looking at it. That's the balanced amount of vital energy that they need to do a good job being dogs. Whether they're doing a sport, whether they're sitting couch potatoes, whether they're greyhounds, they run and then they go to sleep. That's what we're looking at. We want to look at a very vital, strong, every part of their body, all the muscle tissues being well nourished so that their musculature, their bones are strong, their tendons, all the things we want a dog to be able to do. So we're next.
Before we move forward, I don't know if you did this intentionally, but did you know that this picture is of my girl, Lexi?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just used it because I love it. It's one of my favorites.
This is a picture of one of my dogs. Her name was Lexi. When she was probably about, I would say she's about 5 or 6 months old there.
Oh, wow.
Because didn't you submit that in one of our requested photos? Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite photos.
It is
amazing.
It wins all the time. It's photo. Thank you.
Yeah. So when I seen it, I was like, "Oh, my baby girl!" All right, moving on. Next slide.
Okay. Okay, I keep going. Okay, yin and yang have to be balanced. I love those images of animals that are probably balanced in their own coloration.
Isn't it interesting? Yeah.
It can happen. These are beautiful creatures. So do you work with cats as well? Because we do,
I
obviously.
don't.
Okay.
Yeah, we do, and acupressure is just as valuable for cats as it is for dogs.
The food therapy can be a little bit trickier to have happen with cats, though, but it's worth a try in terms of the generalization of warm and cold, if that's appropriate.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever remember the story, but you in our class, I think one of the things that I always remember is your explanation of the symbol of yin and yang and how the dots are in the opposite color.
Mhm.
And that was that spark of I think what you were talking in regards to, like if it was like really cold out, or if your hands got really cold, that they would get so cold that you would feel that burning sensation, and that was that part of that. I don't know if you remember describing that, the symbol of that.
But one always has the element, the idea of it is that one has the element of the other, and it's a constant dynamic between the two, and it has
And
constant
that's
balance.
what this picture reminds me of, the yin and yang, because you got the element. Great picture slide.
Okay, so let's learn more about it. So here's the other one, and so you can, in your mind, liken the yang to fire and the yin to water. One is cold, one is hot. One can get rid of the other. If you have a puddle and the sun comes out, there goes the puddle. And vice versa. If you have a fire and you need to put it out, you throw water on it. So we're looking at the two opposites, but they must exist together in the body. And that's what this slide is about. It's a brilliant image. It's just absolutely brilliant. And the Tao, it comes from the Tao of understanding that it is a dynamic balance. Ready? Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to look at yang foods and know that yang foods have to do with fire. They're hot in nature. They're drying in nature. And they have a high energy that goes up. You know, you feel it very dramatically in that way. Whereas, next slide, it's yin foods are the opposite. They're cold in nature. They have a wetness usually to them, and they're more internally nourishing. They don't have that high energy aspect to be created. So if you have an animal, for instance, that needs to be run as a coursing dog, for instance, or a high agility trial dog, you're going to want, before to think about putting young energy into that animal, but you also need during the whole time to nourish the muscles, nourish the tissues.
It's a real deep nourishing and from an internal perspective versus superficial. It's very impactful.
Okay, we're going to move
That
on.
dog's having a great time in the water there.
And the reason I have that picture there of the dog being rather aggressive, I don't know if they're playing or they're being aggressive, I can't tell. But the idea is they're being very active. So you're going to want to if you want to calm these dogs down or balance these dogs, you want to look at yin foods that are cooling in nature. Sour, even though dogs are not real fond of sour, you can just put a little apple cider vinegar in there because it also helps with digestive juices, by the way. The other ones listed are tomato, plum. You can put small quantities of that for to be cooling. Whereas bitter foods, again, you have a dog. Most dogs don't care for it, but we usually put some parsley, frankly, into our dog food.
So easy to grow, and it's just nice to crumble or cut into the food.
We have a lot of it in our garden at the moment. Yeah, and lettuce. You can again, chop it up very finely and put it in there because it will help. The other protein aspect would be a freshwater fish. Their trout is cooling, salmon is cooling, and later in this, when we show you a diet for summer, you'll see other fish. But what the goal is to get rid of heat. If there's too much heat in the body, we want to cool it. It gets rid of damp heat as well, especially the bitter foods. They have the ability to get rid of damp heat, too much fluid. You know, a dog that gets too full in the abdomen, this could be a good way to help them rid themselves of that. You're looking at a hot temperament or an aggressive animal. Those are things you want to pay attention to and look at cooling. Overly anxious, or any hot condition, including, inflammation and fever, infection you mentioned the other day.
Yeah.
And in the summer. So let's go on to the next, because we're going to talk about summer.
I just want to say, in an environment of high humidity, these cooling foods would be really good because of the humidity and helping to get rid of the damp heat that can be associated with that as well.
Which can also cause skin and coat issues with that damp heat and so forth. So this will help with dogs that have coat and skin conditions, as well as But the nature of foods, yang foods.
Young foods have to do with warming. If you have an animal, especially older animals that need warming, Nancy mentioned earlier that it's better to warm food for older animals. And so this is what you'd be looking at. The sweet is associated with stomach spleen, and carrots are considered sweet. Eggs are considered relatively sweet. Bananas, oats, pumpkin. Pumpkin, when you're reading some text, especially in England, also means what we call squash.
Right.
Rice and yams are definitely sweet foods. Pungent foods, this could be more like using a pinch of something. You don't want to overdo ginger.
Right, that would be warming.
You don't overdo it. Most dogs do not care for it. A pinch of ginger or pinch of a tincture, cinnamon is definitely warming. And celery, I didn't know that until when I wrote this. So meats are a little trickier. Lamb is definitely extremely warming. Venison, for instance, is extremely warming as well. Chicken can be, but it might be used otherwise. The reason shrimp are considered young is that they move so fast.
And they also say, when depending if the fish is a deep water fish versus a fish on the surface,
right?
That would be the difference between maybe like cold and a warm seafood type thing. So if it was deep water fish, then it would be more of a cooling yin, versus a fish that hangs up closer to the surface would be more of a yang. And so these are foods that you would utilize during the winter, and the yin foods that we spoke on the earlier slide, those would be kind of like foods that we would be starting now in the summer. Summer feeding starts somewhere around, I think, the middle of June. And then that goes on from June, July into August before fall comes. So we would utilize those yin foods during the summer to keep dogs cooled naturally. So I use cucumbers a lot. I slice cucumbers and put it in the dog's water dish, especially those dogs that are constantly panting. Even if that's just part of their nature, I slice up cucumbers and put it in the dog water for a nice cooling effect. So,
You also want to look at the energy of the animal. If they're low energy and you want to bring their energy up, and if they're sad or grieving, helping them feel better with warming foods, not just in the winter, but anytime that's going on.
Sure, right. It can apply to their emotional status as well.
We look at that. We're going to run out of time, so we probably should keep rolling.
No worries.
Okay.
All right.
The neutral foods, these are foods that can be used with yin or yang to balance the actual diet. So they're not neutral, because you're going to see on the list, you can see chicken and beef. Well, those can be on the side of warming, but if you don't want something to be too cold, you add chicken or beef. And again, if you want something to be, you have a warmer meal and you want it not to be quite so warm, you add salmon, sardines. So you're looking at how to balance the food at different times, depending on what your goal is, essentially.
Yeah.
The idea behind them is that it increases body fluids. And again, you use these for substitution. Again, if you don't have one, you can add, say, string beans to a meal that you need to, they're neutral enough that you can add to it.
So they help to moderate high heat or vice versa.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Here we go. Next one.
Yeah.
Here, this is the goal here.
Hot weather. Yeah.
It almost doesn't matter. I mean, we live in New Mexico. It depends on where you live. I think also that's what we talked about in the environment, that we live in New Mexico. It's been quite warm here recently. So we're moving over ourselves to cooling foods. And this is kind of a general list. It is not absolute. Nothing is absolute. You can get other
Chinese medicine,
things vary. But this is sort of a good idea behind it. We do, they have found that if you don't give dogs some level of carbohydrates, such as the dookie beans are high in protein, by the way, and rice, they're having heart issues. So we really recommend adding some level of carbohydrate, whether it be beans and rice, whichever, which together, by the way, produce a protein. So next one.
They make a whole protein, beans and rice together, create a whole protein.
Mm-hmm. We did want to mention that we have a small animal traditional Chinese medicine food energetics course available online. And do you want to say what it's about a little more?
It's about traditional Chinese medicine and how to feed your dog.
Well,
No,
it has recipes. It has recipes how to cook the food.
So it also talks about and shows you how to read a food label. Those horrible foods some of us are used to buy. It explains why things are good, why things aren't so good from a TCM perspective, and gives you the tools to really purchase or make the foods that are best for your dog and their individual situation. In addition to that, it shows you acupressure points that can help enhance the food energetics, given the condition of the dog. You did it.
Yeah, I was able to, upload that. And so I will contest, I have taken a lot of courses in regards to food relation and nutrition for dogs through different venues. And I did take your course probably a couple years back. And it was very easy to follow. And what I liked was I was able to apply it to my specific dogs and some of the issues that they were having at that time. And ironically, as you're working with dogs, and your own dogs, if you have multiple, the tricky piece sometimes is trying to be able to create meals for each individual dog. So it really kind of helped me get through fine-tuning. I was working with one specific dog. He was always having troubles and stuff like that. But the class went really, really well. And there was a lot of information and downloadable stuff that you could save, including the recipes and stuff.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Christine, because I think that's a really important part of the program. It's not just that you take it online, but it is a valuable resource. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Definitely. And so I flashed up this little Acu chart here. And if anybody is interested in the Acu chart, they can contact you if they wanted in a email form or something downloadable, certainly. But maybe we can just quickly explain our chart here, and then we'll wrap things up, just so people kind of understand what our chart is.
Okay, GV, governing vessel 14, is the major cooling point on the body. It releases heat. Then you have CV12, conception vessel.
I just want to say where that's located is at the end of the cervical vertebra and the beginning of the thoracic vertebra. So it's right in that sort of dip area in front of the scapula.
At the base of the neck.
Right on the dorsal midline. There's a little hole there, and you just access a point by putting pressure directly onto that point, and not too hard. It's like 1 pound of pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, CV12, which is conception vessel 12, is between the xiphoid process, which is the end of the rib cage, right in the middle, right smack dab in the middle. Feel for the umbilicus, the belly button, and it's right in the middle between the two. And it is probably one of the most important points having to do with digestion. It is extremely important for digestion. Next quick point is stomach 36. It's known as the master point for the entire gastrointestinal system. It balances that and also enhances the function. Governing vessel 14.
Yeah, we did that one.
We did that with spleen 6.
Mm-hmm.
The name is 3 yin meeting, and it helps nutrients become
It
more powerful.
harmonizes the liver, spleen, and kidney. It just balances the energy and really promotes relieves stagnation of food and moves nutritive chi through the body.
Yeah, I was just looking at a little note that Barbara Kolowski, I'm not very good with last names, said it's just really had a lot of good information, and she's going to have to come back and replay it.
So, good. All right.
Yeah. So, but anyways, well, we appreciate you joining us. Anyways, and so those are great points. And I got to be honest, I use that stomach 36 all the time with my dogs, particularly if they have like soft, because it goes for diarrhea or constipation.
It's an amazing point.
Either way.
In TCM school, that was always a go-to point along with large intestine 4s.
Yeah. So those are really great. And Nancy and Amy have so graciously offered a 10% discount to anybody who is watching. We don't have the discount code, but I will come back and put that code into the video so that you can go and apply if you have any interest in taking the course. I highly recommend it. I think it was a phenomenal course, totally worth the dollars and the time invested. I do appreciate it and certainly use it all the time. So thank you very much, you guys, for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we are going to go ahead and wrap it up here. And so I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. If you, again, have any questions, please feel free to, get in touch. You can leave comments below. We'll circle back. And again, I'll come back with that discount code once we have that applied for anybody who is interested in taking that class. So we'll be signing off. And for next week, guys, I am going to have Caleb write from Orzona CBD oils, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're actually going to talk about CBD oil as a daily supplement, as opposed to using it for anxiety or something of that nature. And we're going to actually make treats using CBD oil. So I've never done it live, but we're going to try it. So it'll be a lot of fun. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.